Hey, my name is Evan. I'm 32. Until 6 months ago, I was just the guy who fixed ovens and left without looking back. Then, the day before Thanksgiving, I knocked on a door in the rich part of town, and a woman with flour on her hands said, "You have to stay and taste everything." Her kitchen smelled like orange zest and secrets, and when I wrapped my fingers around her wrist under cold running water, we both knew we'd crossed a line that had nothing to do with burnt skin. She looked me in the eyes and whispered, "I cook, so I remember who I am." Drop the city you're watching from in the comments and tell me, would you have said yes? I never should have said yes when she asked me to stay. But before I tell you about that moment, let me start with the call that changed everything. Wednesday afternoon, day before Thanksgiving. My phone buzzed while I was elbow deep in a busted garbage disposal across town. "Emergency service?" The voice was careful, polished. "My oven died and I'm hosting tomorrow." I almost said no. The Whitmore address was in Hillcrest, that part of town where the driveways are longer than my apartment, where people like me fix things and leave. But I needed the holiday pay. My truck was making sounds that meant money I didn't have. "I'll be there in 40 minutes, I told her. The house sat at the end of a cul-de-sac like something from a magazine. Tall windows, citrus trees that probably cost more than my rent. I grabbed my toolkit and walked up to a front door that looked like it had never been slammed. She answered before I knocked. Claire Whitmore was beautiful the way expensive things are beautiful, not flashy, just right. 45 maybe. Blonde hair pulled back loose enough that a few pieces escaped. She wore dark jeans and a cream sweater that probably felt like clouds. "Evan?" she said, reading my name off the work order. "Yes, ma'am. Let's see what we're dealing with." She led me through rooms that smelled like vanilla and money. Clean lines, nothing out of place. The kind of house that makes you check your boots twice. The kitchen stopped me cold. Marble counters caught the afternoon light like ice. Double ovens built into walls. An island big enough to feed 20 people. And covering every surface. Food. Everywhere I looked, there was food. Turkey parts in a roasting pan, vegetables chopped and sorted into neat piles, pies cooling on racks. The smell hit me like a memory I couldn't place. Orange zest and clove steam, brown butter, something sweet baking. "Sorry for the mess," she said, but she didn't sound sorry. She sounded proud. I got a little carried away. I knelt beside the dead oven and popped the control panel. "Hosting the whole family?" Her hands went still on a dish towel. "Actually, no. Change of plans. It's just going to be smaller this year." Something in her voice made me look up. She was staring at the turkey like it had, personally, betrayed her. "But you cooked for 20 people anyway," I said. She laughed, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Old habits." The igniter was shot. Simple fix, but I had to pull the whole unit to get at it. While I worked, she moved around me like we'd done this dance before. Never too close, never in my way. Just there. "You cook professionally?" she asked, watching me test the gas line. "Used to, line cook for about 6 years, before I switched to this." "Why'd you switch?" I thought about how to answer that. How to explain that restaurant kitchens are war zones where you're only as good as your last plate, and I got tired of being at war with food. How fixing things felt cleaner than cooking them. "Restaurants eat your soul," I said finally. "This just eats your knees." She smiled at that, a real one this time. The repair took 30 minutes. When I fired up the oven, it lit clean and even. The sound it made, that soft whoosh of flame catching, seemed to unlock something in her shoulders. "Perfect," she breathed, like I just handed her Christmas morning. I packed my tools and pulled out the invoice. "That'll be—" "Wait." She turned from the oven to face me fully. "Would you— I mean, I know this sounds strange, but would you mind staying? Just for a few minutes? I should have said no. Should have taken my money and left like always. But there was something in her face, something careful and hopeful and a little bit desperate. Stay for what? She gestured at the food covering her kitchen. Taste everything. Give me an honest opinion. I cook alone so much, I've forgotten if I'm any good. That's when I noticed it, how quiet the house was, how the table in the dining room was set for four, but the silence felt like an empty theater. You don't have to, she said quickly. I know you probably want to get home. I just thought, a professional opinion. The old rule echoed in my head. Never eat where you work. Keep it clean. Keep it simple. Take the money and leave. But she was looking at me like I might disappear if she blinked too hard. Okay, I said. Just for a few minutes. Her face lit up like I'd plugged her back in. What happened next? I've replayed it 1,000 times. The way she moved through her kitchen like she was finally allowed to be herself. How she plated small portions of everything. Just tastes, she kept saying, but each one was arranged like art. She started with the cranberry sauce, homemade, the kind with whole berries that pop between your teeth. Good acid balance, I said, falling back into chef mode without thinking. Could use a pinch more salt to bring out the orange. Her eyes widened. Orange? How did you? You zested it fresh. Can smell it on your hands. She looked down at her fingers like she'd forgotten they were there. The stuffing came next, then green beans that tasted like someone had remembered. They were vegetables, not punishment, sweet potatoes that made me close my eyes without meaning to. My grandmother's recipe, she said, watching my face, brown butter and bourbon. She knew what she was doing. For 40 minutes, we moved around each other in that marble kitchen. She'd plate something, I'd taste it and tell her what worked, what didn't. She listened like I was teaching her secrets instead of just talking about salt and heat. The turkey was perfect. The gravy was silk. Even the pie crust, which she kept apologizing for, was flaky and golden and better than most restaurants I'd worked in. You're not just good, I told her finally. You're exceptional. She blushed like a teenager. That's when it happened. The moment I should have seen coming but somehow missed completely. She reached across me for a serving spoon at the same time I turned toward the sink. Our bodies brushed for maybe half a second, her hip against my arm, the smell of her shampoo mixing with clove steam, and something electric passed between us. We both froze. Sorry, she whispered. No harm done. But we were standing too close now. Close enough that I could see the tiny scar on her chin, the way her pulse jumped in her throat. Close enough that I forgot every rule I'd ever made about staying professional. She stepped back first, but not far. I should. The dishes. She turned toward the sink, and that's when it happened. Her wrist caught the edge of the oven rack. Just a quick scrape, but she hissed and jerked her hand back. You okay? Fine. Just clumsy. But I saw the red mark across her wrist, saw her cradle it against her chest. Let me see. It's nothing? Claire, let me see. The way I said her name made her go still, like I'd just crossed a line neither of us had noticed until now. She held out her wrist. The burn was shallow but angry. I turned on the cold water without asking permission and guided her hand under the stream. The water ran over her wrist, over my fingers where they curled around hers, to hold her steady. Neither of us said anything. We just stood there, watching the water carry away the heat. Her skin was soft, softer than anything I had a right to be touching. I should have let go. Should have stepped back and made some professional comment about first aid. Instead, I found myself memorizing the weight of her hand in mine, the way her breathing had changed. Better? I asked. She nodded but didn't pull away. We stayed like that longer than we should have. Water running. My thumb accidentally brushing the inside of her wrist where her pulse lived. That's when her phone buzzed. She jumped like she'd been caught stealing, pulled her hand free, and fumbled for her phone on the counter. The text message lit up her screen bright enough for me to see. On my way. Surprise. Should be there by 8. Can't wait to see. You. M. The blood drained from her face. Your husband? I asked, though I already knew. She nodded, staring at the phone like it might bite her. He's supposed to be in Chicago until Friday. Work conference. He said, he said not to wait up. She looked around her kitchen, at all the food, at me standing too close to her sink, and something like panic flickered across her features. I should go, I said. Yes, you should. But neither of us moved for a long moment. We just looked at each other across 3 feet of marble and the weight of something neither of us wanted to name. Finally, I grabbed my toolkit. The oven's running perfect. Won't give you any trouble. Thank you. She was already moving, clearing dishes, putting distance between us. For everything. The repair. The... the tasting. No problem. At the front door, she pressed a container into my hands. Leftovers, she said. Payment for my time. Her fingers brushed mine when she handed it over. Thank you, Evan. Really, you saved Thanksgiving. I wanted to say something about how she didn't need saving, how her cooking was already perfect, how any man who left her alone with all that food was an idiot. Instead, I said, "Have a good holiday, Mrs. Whitmore." I made it halfway to my truck before I realized something was snagged on my tool bag. I pulled it free without looking, some kind of fabric, and tossed it onto my passenger seat. It wasn't until I was 3 blocks away that the smell hit me. Oranges and vanilla. The same smell that had been in her hair when we stood too close at the sink. I looked down and saw it. Her scarf. Cream-colored wool. Soft as a whisper. It must have caught on my bag somehow when I was packing up. I should have turned around. Should have knocked on her door and handed it back like a professional. Instead, I drove home with her scarf beside me, filling my truck with the scent of her secrets. Some fixes are simple. Gas line, igniter, 40 minutes, and a bill. Some fixes leave you holding pieces of someone else's life, wondering when exactly you stopped being just the repairman. I still have that scarf. Even now, 2 years later, it sits in my dresser drawer like a confession I never made. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The real story starts the next morning. Thanksgiving Day, when I drove back to return what I'd accidentally stolen and learned that some invitations, once accepted, change everything. Thanksgiving morning hit me like cold water. I woke up at 5:30 with her scarf wrapped around my wrist somehow. Must have been holding it while I slept. The wool still held traces of orange and vanilla, but in the gray morning light, it just looked like evidence. Evidence of what, I wasn't sure, but something. I made coffee and sat at my kitchen table, the kind that folds down from the wall because my apartment's about as big as her walk-in closet, and tried to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do. Option 1, drop it in the mail, clean, simple, professional. Option 2, drive over there and hand it back like a normal human being. Option 3, keep it forever and pretend this never happened. I was leaning toward option 3 when my phone rang. Evan, it's Mrs. DeLuca, my stovetop's acting up again. Mrs. DeLuca, 72 years old, been my client for 3 years, makes the best soup in the city, and has opinions about everything. I'll be right over. Her kitchen smelled like garlic and saints. She had me fix the burner that always ran too hot, then sat me down at her table with a bowl of something that tasted like childhood. You look like hell, she said. Thanks. Happy Thanksgiving to you too. She studied my face while I ate. Mrs. DeLuca had this way of reading people like recipes. A pinch of this, too much of that, needs more time in the oven. What's her name? She asked finally. I nearly choked on the soup. What? The woman. The one making you look like you lost a bet with God. I set down my spoon. It's not like that. Mm-hmm. She got up and started slicing bread. Tell me about her. So I did. Don't know why. Maybe because Mrs. DeLuca had fed me through 2 breakups and a job change, and sometimes you need to confess to someone who's already seen you at your worst. I told her about the oven repair, about Claire cooking for ghosts, about the way she'd looked when I said her food was exceptional, about the moment at the sink when everything shifted. And now you have something that belongs to her, Mrs. DeLuca said when I finished. Her scarf. It got caught on my bag. Hmm. She packed up leftovers while I sat there feeling like a teenager caught sneaking out. Mrs. DeLuca, what would you do? She handed me a container of soup and a paper bag of bread. I'd return what wasn't mine to keep, but I'd be careful about it. Careful how? Some women cook for the person they were promised, not the person they got. She touched my shoulder. If you go back, be useful, not greedy. An hour later, I was driving toward the Whitmores, with her scarf in a paper bag on the passenger seat. I'd planned to leave it on the doorstep with a note. Quick and clean. The plan lasted until the front door opened. A kid stood there, 17, maybe 18, tall and lanky with his father's jawline and careful eyes. Can I help you? He asked. I'm Evan. Fixed your mom's oven yesterday. She left this in my truck. I held up the paper bag. Just wanted to return it. The kid, Noah, I remembered from the work order, took the bag but didn't close the door. He studied my face the same way his stepmother had studied the turkey. You're the repair guy, he said. That's right. Mom said you saved Thanksgiving. Before I could answer, I heard footsteps behind him. Claire appeared at the end of the hallway, and the sight of her hit me like deja vu and lightning at the same time. She was wearing jeans and an old sweater, hair pulled back in a messy bun. No makeup. She looked younger, more real. Evan? She moved past Noah to the door. What are you doing here? I gestured at the bag in her stepson's hands. Your scarf got caught on my tools yesterday. Wanted to return it. She opened the bag and pulled out the cream wool. Her fingers traced over it like she was checking for damage. Thank you, she said quietly. I was wondering where this went. We stood there for a moment, me on the porch, her in the doorway, Noah watching both of us with eyes that missed nothing. The oven's still running good? I asked, because someone needed to say something. Like a dream. She wrapped the scarf around her shoulders. Thank you again. For everything. No problem. I should have left then. Should have walked back to my truck and driven away. Instead, I found myself saying, Happy Thanksgiving, Mrs. Whitmore. Claire, she said, just Claire. That night, I ate Mrs. DeLuca's soup and thought about the way Claire had said her own name, like she was reminding herself who she was underneath all that marble and politeness. My phone buzzed around 8. Unknown number. Thank you for the scarf. Did you get enough to eat? I stared at the text for 10 minutes before answering. Me. Mrs. DeLuca fed me. You? Claire. Quiet dinner. Noah and I finished the leftover pie. Me. Where's your husband? 3 dots appeared and disappeared. Appeared again. Claire. Flight delays. Won't be home until tomorrow. I should have put the phone down. Should have turned on the TV and pretended this conversation wasn't happening. Me. Sorry to hear that. Claire. Actually, I have a small favor to ask. The lower oven is making a squeaking sound. When you have time. My heart did something stupid in my chest. Me. I could swing by tomorrow morning, if that's not intrusive. Claire. Bring whatever time you can spare. The next morning, Black Friday, I drove back to the Whitmores with my toolkit and a head full of warnings I should have listened to. She answered the door in a simple blue sweater and jeans that fit her like they'd been waiting their whole lives for her body. Noah was headed out for baseball practice. Mark was still dealing with airline chaos. The lower oven squeaked when it opened, just like she'd said. Loose hinge, 5-minute fix. But Claire brought me coffee in mismatched mugs, the kind of mugs that get used when the good china stays in the cabinet, and somehow 5 minutes turned into an hour. We talked about nothing, about everything, about how stores opened earlier each year, how recipes got passed down and lost, how holidays could feel like performances sometimes. You don't have to pretend with me, I said when she apologized again for the simple coffee. She looked up from her mug. Pretend what? That you're not good enough. Your cooking, your coffee, your. I gestured around the perfect kitchen. All of this. You don't have to apologize for being exceptional. Something shifted in her face, like I'd just given her permission to breathe. I've been apologizing for taking up space for so long, I forgot how to just be, she said. Well, stop, she laughed. Just like that? Just like that. That's when I noticed the SUV slowing down outside. Big and black and shiny, it cruised past the front window like a shark testing the waters. Claire saw it too. We both froze. Paula, she whispered, my neighbor. The SUV rolled on without stopping, but the damage was done. The spell was broken. Reality came flooding back like cold water. I should go, I said. Yes, but she didn't move to show me out. Evan, before you do quality control, just a few bites. She'd already plated small portions of yesterday's leftovers, tiny perfect samples arranged like art. I tasted each one and gave her the professional feedback she'd asked for. Salt levels, texture, balance. But what I was really doing was memorizing the way her face lit up when I complimented her seasoning. The way she hung on every word like I was teaching her a language she'd forgotten she knew. Our hands brushed once when she handed me a dish towel. Both of us stepped back like we'd touched something electric. That's when her phone buzzed. Mark, home late tonight, promise. I watched the light dim in her eyes like someone had turned down a switch. I should pack up, I said. Of course. But as I was loading my tools, she appeared at my elbow with a small container. Leftovers, she said, for helping with the squeaking. Our fingers touched when she handed it over, just for a second, just long enough for me to feel her pulse jumping. I made it to my truck before Paula's SUV came cruising back. This time it stopped right in front of the house. Paula Green climbed out like she owned the sidewalk. 40s, blonde, the kind of smile that never reached her eyes. She was walking her dog, but the leash was just an excuse to patrol the neighborhood. Back again, she called out, bright as a searchlight. Second fix, I said, closing my toolbox. Lucky Claire. Good men who show up are rare. Her eyes flicked past me toward the house. Everything working properly now? Before I could answer, Claire appeared at the front door. Thanks again, Evan, she said, her voice perfectly neutral. The performance was flawless, just a homeowner thanking her repairman. No problem, Mrs. Whitmore. Should run smooth now. I climbed into my truck and started the engine. In my rearview mirror, I watched Paula snap a photo of her dog, but the camera angle was wrong. Too wide, like she was trying to capture more than just the golden retriever. That night, my phone stayed silent until almost midnight. Claire, thank you for being careful today. Me, you too. I stared at that exchange for a long time before putting the phone face down and trying to sleep. Saturday passed in a blur of small repair jobs and heavy thoughts. I kept my head down, fixed what was broken, collected my money. Normal work, normal day, except every orange I saw reminded me of her scarf. Every kitchen made me think of hers. Sunday was worse. I was fixing a dishwasher across town when Mrs. DeLuca called. You sound tired, she said. I'm fine. Come by tonight. I made too much sauce. Her kitchen felt like sanctuary. She fed me pasta and read my face like a map she'd memorized. You went back, she said finally. She needed a hinge fixed. Mm-hmm. She refilled my wine glass. And how's that working out for you? I told her about Paula, about the careful dance Claire and I were doing around something neither of us wanted to name, about how I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff every time I saw her. Decency isn't distance, Mrs. DeLuca said when I finished. It's detail. You can care about someone without wrecking their life. She packed up leftovers in an extra pan, the good one, heavy cast iron that held heat like a promise. For returning favors without staying too long, she said, pressing it into my hands. Monday crawled by. I saw 3 kitchens that weren't hers, fixed 4 ovens that didn't smell like orange zest and clove steam, came home to my fold-down table and canned soup and the kind of silence that echoes. I drafted a dozen text messages, deleted them all. Across town, I imagined Claire doing the same thing. Both of us practicing restraint as an act of care, both of us failing at forgetting. Tuesday arrived like a held breath. At 2:07 a.m., my phone lit up the darkness. Claire. Leftovers? I sat up in bed, suddenly wide awake. Before I could answer, another message appeared. Claire. Porch. I threw on boots and a jacket and drove through empty streets to her cul-de-sac. The porch light was on, humming soft and steady in the quiet night. A takeout container sat on the front step, still warm. Beneath it, a note in her precise handwriting. Taste everything, then leave the pan. I looked up and saw her in the doorway. No makeup, hair loose around her shoulders. She looked like she'd been awake for hours. We stood there, 2 feet apart, the November air sharp between us. You came, she whispered. You asked. I pulled her scarf from my jacket pocket, the one I'd kept like a talisman, the one that still smelled like her secrets. I wrapped it gently around her neck, my fingers careful not to linger against her skin. I should have given this back properly, I said. I'm glad you didn't. We looked at each other across the space we were keeping safe, the space that said we knew exactly what line we were walking. Claire, I know. This is. I know. That's when I kissed her, or she kissed me, or we met somewhere in the middle like magnets finally allowed to touch, just once, soft, at the corner of her mouth where promises live. It lasted maybe 3 seconds, long enough to taste cinnamon and regret, long enough to understand why some people throw their lives away for moments like this. We stepped back at the same time. The light, she said, nodding toward the porch fixture. 2 blinks means safe, one means not tonight. I nodded like this was the most natural thing in the world, like we were discussing weather instead of inventing a language for secrets. I understand. I picked up the container and Mrs. DeLuca's pan and walked back to my truck. At the corner, I turned around once. She was still standing there, wrapped in wool and moonlight. The porch light blinked twice. That was 6 months ago. Now it's a routine, a careful ritual that keeps us both honest and hungry. Some nights I drive past her street around 10 p.m. If the light blinks twice, I know she's okay. Know she's thinking of me. If it doesn't blink, I keep driving. Some mornings there's a container on my doorstep, soup when it's cold, pie when she's been baking, always with a note, always signed with just her initial. We text in codes now. Knife emoji plus orange for careful cooking. Timer emoji for missing you. Recipe exchanges that are really love letters in disguise. I've learned her schedule. Mondays she volunteers at the food bank. Thursdays she has book club. Fridays Mark travels for work. And sometimes, just sometimes, the porch light blinks twice at 2:07 a.m. We've never kissed again. Never touched except for that moment when I hand her an empty pan and our fingers accidentally brush. Never said the words that would make this real and dangerous and impossible to take back. But we've learned a new language, timers and lights and recipes, the grammar of careful people who know exactly how much they have to lose. Last week, Noah left for college. I saw Claire at the grocery store buying ingredients for 1 instead of 4. She looked smaller somehow, lost. Our eyes met across the produce section. She smiled and held up an orange, then put it back without buying it. That night, the porch light blinked 3 times. I'd never seen 3 before. I sat in my truck for 20 minutes trying to figure out what it meant. Finally, I texted her. Me. 3 blinks? Claire. 3 means thank you for seeing me, for staying careful, for letting me keep the parts of myself I thought I'd lost. I drove home with that message glowing on my phone like a small sun. Some fixes are visible. You can see the flame catch, hear the timer ring, watch the door seal tight against the cold. Some fixes live in the space between what you want and what you choose, in the weight of empty containers returned clean, in the soft hum of a porch light that speaks a language only 2 people understand. Tonight, I'll drive past her street like I always do. Maybe the light will blink twice. Maybe it won't. Either way, I'll keep driving, keep the radio low, keep the windows cracked so the November air reminds me that some hungers are meant to be honored, not fed. And tomorrow morning, maybe there'll be soup on my doorstep. Maybe a note that says, taste everything in handwriting I could recognize blind. Maybe nothing at all. But I'll check anyway, because some rituals are worth the risk of disappointment, because some people change you just by trusting you to be careful with their loneliness, because Claire Whitmore taught me that the deepest intimacy isn't what you take from someone, it's what you choose not to take, even when they're offering. Some fixes are visible, a flame, a timer, a door that seals. Some you only taste later, standing on a porch with the light blinking twice.